Good morning, everyone. I'm Lucy Beednell with the ARC of Northern Virginia, and I am very excited that we have Jody and Mariah and a surprise guest in Katambari from the Fairfax County Health Department here today. We're going to be talking about emergency preparedness, especially in the context of people with disabilities, who we know often have different accessibility needs, medical needs, caregiver needs, all kinds of other things that can make evacuating and preparing for an emergency significantly trickier. As we have heard nonstop in the last couple of years, right? Not only just living through a pandemic, but also getting the echoes of other crises are going to be coming, right? Our climate is changing, pandemics are changing, the nature of our world is very different. So I can't think of a more timely presentation as we all address these life-saving issues. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to the team here, and Jody and Mariah are each going to speak for a little bit, and then we'll do an activity and take some questions. So again, feel free to put your questions in anytime, and we'll get to them as things move along. So we'll turn the microphone over to you all. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Jody, and I'm a community preparedness specialist in the Division of Emergency Preparedness and Response here at the Health Department. In my role as a preparedness specialist, I engage the community in health preparedness and provide guidance and training to support the community in their preparedness efforts. I'm excited to be sharing information with you today about medical preparedness, and I'm going to turn it over to Mariah to introduce herself.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Mariah Katayev, and while Jody and I work together a lot, we're actually in two different agencies. She rocks the world of health department, and I rock the world of emergency management for the Department of Emergency Management and Security. My official title is the Access and Functional Needs Planning Specialist, and what that means is when it comes to emergency plans or anything related to emergency management, I'm the person committed to and devoted to all things access and functional needs. I also have a disability myself, so I take this field very seriously and it warms my heart. I also just want to say thank you to Lucy for having us. I haven't seen the art group since I think the Meet the First Responder Day. That was about a year ago. So really happy to be with this group again. And I will stop talking. I'll pull up my screen and I will let Health Department do their part of the show. But while I'm doing that, I would just like to reiterate what Lucy said. If you have any questions, no matter what they are, feel free to put them in the Q&A and we will answer them probably at the end. But I'm a very blunt person. And if there's a question I can answer, I will for you. If there's a question I cannot answer for you, I will try to find the person who can. Now let me share my screen. And can I just get a confirmation from Jody that you can see it?
Yes, looks great.
Okay, let me take it over.
Okay, all right. So we're going to talk to you about medical preparedness and what should be in your first aid kit. So to be ready for emergencies, every family should have a first aid kit, a collection of supplies to treat common injuries like cuts and burns. And help might not be available to get to you right away. So it's important to have supplies on hand so that you can respond to medical emergencies. First aid kits come in many shapes and sizes. You can buy pre-made kits online in drugstores, but they might be expensive and you might not use everything in your kit. So preparing one doesn't have to be difficult or expensive. A lot of the supplies you may already have at home. Think about what you've got at home. Most of us have pain relievers, Band-Aids, scissors, tweezers. And as you build your kit, you want to think about your individual situation and you really want to personalize the supplies. Think about anyone in your household that has a health condition. What do they need to maintain their everyday routine? Every family's kit will look different according to the needs of the family. And if you're a pet owner, don't forget you need a first aid kit for your pet. So I'd like to pause now and just, as we look at the screen, these are just suggestions of what to include. But I'd like to take a moment, and if anybody would like to speak up and let us know, I don't know if we have a chat feature, if anyone has any good ideas about what would be important for them to include, we'd love to hear it. I can start and let you know that a member of my family has severe asthma and a food allergy. So our first aid kit contains an EpiPen, an inhaler, a breathing rescue medication, and we even have a nebulizer. Is anyone able to share ideas about what they think would really be important for them to put into their first aid kit?
I can call out my family if that's okay, Jody.
Great.
I know you talked about an allergy, but my fiance is deathly allergic to apples, which is just such a unique allergy. And because of that, apples are not an allergy that's consistently listed on the may contain peanuts, may contain soy, may contain milk. Apples is not one of them. So that has been a real concern on making sure that we had EpiPens for him, just because in an emergency situation, unfortunately, we cannot count on the fact that that is an allergy that is going to be safely marked.
Would anyone else like to share ideas about what would be important for them to include?
Okay, so Cox Farms has baking soda in their kits for bee stings. We love that. And then low tech communication board for health concerns. We're going to be talking about that.
I can show you a couple other ideas. If you can see this is a little mini contacts case. So you could put the solution in a bottle here. So this is kind of a handy thing that was on Amazon. And then this is a little mini sharps container. So if you have an injection pen, the needle would go right in. So this is pretty handy as well. So just to give folks some ideas. And then, of course, an emergency blanket would be good. Okay. And then as far as pets, wet wipes, scissors, tweezers to remove ticks, and a toy. But the important thing is just remember, it's not a one size fits all. You want to develop that kit based on the needs of your family. All right, Mariah, we can go to the second slide. Okay. So once your kit's assembled, you want to make a schedule to check it. You want to check expiration dates, get rid of anything that's expired, and replace anything that's been used up. Check your kit every 6 months. Maybe a good time to do this is when you're replacing the batteries in your smoke detector every spring and fall. And then you want to keep copies. You want to make a list of your health conditions, medications, and emergency contacts to keep with your first aid kit. And this information should be reviewed as well at the same time that you're reviewing your first aid kit. We all change healthcare providers. Our emergency contacts may move, get a different email, a different phone number. So you really want to make sure that information's up to date. And Mariah's going to talk more about these very important documents later in the workshop. Okay, we can advance to the next slide. All right, so let me move down here one moment. This is about storage of your supplies. Give me 1 second here. Okay. So emergencies can happen anytime, while you're at home, when you're out and about, when you're in your car, when you're at work. And what if you suddenly had to leave home and you couldn't return for a while? What if you had to evacuate in floodwaters? So you would want your first aid supplies to stay clean and dry and not become contaminated. So if we look at this picture, there's a couple of different types of bags that you could store supplies in. The blue bag is a dry sack. It comes in different sizes. It's waterproof. It has straps so you could quickly grab and go. but your bag size is going to depend on how much you need to carry. The red bag is a smaller bag that has compartments with zippers. So these are just examples. You really have to decide how much you need to carry and what's best for your family. Remember to store your first aid kits in an easy to find place. Make sure your family members know where it is, and teach children that are old enough to understand the purpose of the kit and where it is. Okay, we can go ahead and advance, Mariah. All right. Medications should be one of the first things that you consider when you're planning for an emergency. Everyone that takes medications or cares for a family member that does should think about how they're going to maintain their supply in emergencies. Some medications are necessary to sustain life. Some medications require refrigeration. So it's very important to think ahead about this. In an emergency, supply chains could be disrupted. Your pharmacy might not be able to fill your prescription. So to combat this, refill prescriptions as early as your insurance will allow, usually up to 7 days, to build up your supply. And if possible, have a 7-day supply of all your medications, and make sure you have water in your kit to take the medication with. You want to have a conversation with your doctor or pharmacist about how you can create an extra emergency supply. Sometimes it might mean a separate prescription and paying out of pocket, but in some cases it's worth considering. And then lastly, you want to be sure to rotate your medications in your kit with the first in, first out method. So this means use up that first prescription first. You don't want that to expire before you can use it up. And that's another important reason to check your kit, at a minimum every 6 months, and make sure it's current and up to date. Okay, we can move along to the next slide. This is an example of a communication card. So for family members that have a loved one that's nonverbal, how do you communicate? Everyone has a way to communicate, but it's going to look different for every family. In an emergency, communications often break down. People are under a lot of stress. And when first responders arrive on scene, communication is critical to assess a person's condition and get them the proper care. So communication cards might be worth considering to help bridge that gap so that people can communicate through words and pictures. Think about what an emergency responder might need to know about you. In non-emergency times, you can write out pre-written phrases such as "I use American Sign Language," or if you make announcements, "I need them written or signed." And you can keep that in your emergency kit. You can write them on little cards. And also make sure to have a pad of paper and pen for written communications. All right, next slide, Mariah. Okay, let's talk a moment about durable medical equipment. So it's very important for you to write down instructions for use. If you have any special medical equipment or assistive technologies, you want to be very detailed and specific. Include information such as the make, model number, manufacturer, and the manufacturer's contact information. And you want to teach the people that are going to be helping you in an emergency how to use the equipment. The last thing you need when everyone's scrambling around is to be figuring out how to use it. So in those non-emergencies times, teach those that are going to be assisting you how to use the equipment. Don't rely on emergency responders to assist you with these type of items. And you always want to keep items fully charged. Pack the chargers, extra batteries, and backup equipment if you can. And something else you could do is, in non-emergency times, contact suppliers and find out what are their capabilities. If a household member is dependent on electrically powered medical equipment, You can contact Dominion Energy, for example, to be added to a serious medical condition list. And this applies to individuals who are dependent on mechanical ventilator, a feeding pump, oxygen, home dialysis, CPAP, nebulizer, hospital beds, refrigeration, or HVAC medical needs. But the form, it's an annual form, so you have to remember to complete it yearly. And now I'm going to return it over to Mariah, and she's going to talk to you about planning.
Okay, thank you so much, Jody. And I do see that we have Q&As. We will get to them at the end. So I apologize if you have that itching question that we have not answered yet, but I promise we will. So whenever I talk about emergency management or emergency planning in general, I personally think it's helpful to imagine the situation just because, living in this area, thankfully, we don't see a lot of bad things happen all the time. So sometimes it can be hard to imagine a situation where we don't have things that we're really used to. So I like to go in with the mindset that we are planning for a time for 3 to 5 days. There's going to be no power, no water, difficult or inoperable communications. And what that means is maybe phone lines are down or certain towers are down, so others are flooded and busy. So maybe texts are going through, but not phone calls. Limited or no access to retail, and that would include pharmaceutical situations, and then no outside help. Because unfortunately, when there is a large-scale emergency that is affecting a large amount of people, sometimes the emergency help can take time. It's not a fun thing to think about or talk about, but it is important to mention and bring a light to. Now, what should go in your emergency kit? I'm a visual person, so I put some kid-friendly graphics to simplify the types of things that we want in an emergency kit. But to simplify it, we want water, at least 1 gallon of water per person per day, canned food, and please put a can opener. Unfortunately, we always see an emergency inside of an emergency due to lack of planning. And the most common example of that is that someone will have canned food because they prepped for a power outage, which is fantastic, but they did not plan to open the can. And then they're opening the can of food with a knife, and then they cut themselves. And then we have 2 bad situations at the same time. So please make sure you have a manual can opener. And just like Jody said, a lot of this can be done in an affordable manner. I am a very, very strong believer that the majority of emergency kits can be started at the Dollar Tree. You can get plastic bags and Ziploc bags at Dollar Tree, kitchenware, basic first aid kits, canned food, can openers, a basic flashlight, and batteries you can get at Dollar Tree. I admit that a NOAA weather radio is a more expensive item, and that is not something you will see there. But you can get cell phone charging devices and a way to store your medication at Dollar Tree. When it comes to generators, I also want to say that the Fairfax County area has very strict rules and regulations when it comes to generators. So make sure you read up about the fire code and fire marshal laws when it comes to generators, because unfortunately there is a chance that if you are like me and live in a condominium or apartment, you might not be regulated to have a generator in your home. The reason behind that is just due to carbon monoxide poisoning and safety for those around you as well as yourselves. We always talk about emergency food and water and medicine, and that is vital, and we need those things to live. There are other things, though, that can make life a lot easier when we get back to our new normal. And that's going to be things that really show who you are and the things that you need on a day-to-day basis. These images are not inclusive, and I'm going to read them out loud in case there's someone in this group that maybe relies on a screen reader or some sort of visual impairment. And that is an insurance card, your insurance policy, whether that is for car or homeowners insurance or renter's insurance. If you rent, it is still equally important to have insurance versus homeowners insurance. We also have a picture of an RX notepad. And what that is meant to represent is that, let's say there's a large scale emergency or disaster that unfortunately a lot of people need to leave their homes. In times of an emergency where we are activating emergency sheltering, There will be a way that we can try to assist with getting you your medication, but we're going to need some proof that you do take said medication. So the best way that I recommend doing that is a lot of doctors nowadays use my chart. So maybe a printout in your emergency kit showing that a doctor stated that you take this medication, because your list can't be something that you filled out or you filling out for a loved one or someone that you would care for. It needs to be something that was filled in either by hand or digitally by a medical professional, just so we know that that is without doubt the correct medication and dosage that you do take. And just like how Jody was saying, how we switch out things because they expire, we would like you on a yearly basis to switch out the statement saying which medications you or your loved one take, just so we have a good idea that this is a current active prescription list. Because I mean, doses change all the time, or maybe you get on one medication, so then you have to get off of another due to a conflict of the two working together. And it's just really important that we have that information. And the last thing we want is another emergency within an emergency due to someone getting the incorrect medication. Now, pets are family too. I will not speak for everyone, but I have 2 cats and I love them more than I love a lot of people, because, you know, these are cats that I have raised one of them since he was a baby, and they mean a lot to me. In times of evacuation into Fairfax County emergency shelters, we do have a way to keep families together, because we've learned from catastrophic events like Hurricane Katrina that there are situations where people will choose to not evacuate due to the inability of their furry family members to come with them, and we never want that situation to take place again. That said, animals need unique supplies, and it is the responsibility of the owner to ensure that your animal has this unique supplies. For dogs and cats are very overlapping. You know, we need sanitary items, whether that is poop bags or a litter box, food, whether it's dry or canned food, water. For dogs, we want to make sure that your animals have a leash and a collar with personal identifiers on them at all times. For cats, we want them to have a carrier and a collar for identifiers at all times. If you are someone that has an animal that is not a dog or a cat, you are going to need to bring the home of the animal. So what I mean by that is, if you are someone that has a bird, you're going to need to bring a bird cage. If you are someone that has a terrarium-based animal, whether that is a fish or a reptile or amphibian, we're going to need you to bring those. The reasoning behind that is just, we do not have the supplies in our emergency shelters set up for those kinds of animals or those species with the unique needs that come with them. And we don't want you to leave them, but we want to make sure that they have everything you need. So again, if you do not have a cat or a dog and you have an animal that's a little more unique or less common in Fairfax County, we are going to request that you bring the carrier or a temporary home for that animal with you. Now I'm going to do a little bit of an activity. And for this, I am going to show examples. And then since we are doing the Q&A, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show an example page. And then I'm going to stop sharing my screen after everyone has read the example page, so then people can talk in the chat, the Q&A, and I can see it and we can have a great conversation about this. So there's going to be 3 slides of examples divided into different types of hazards. So if you don't see the hazard that you're thinking about in the next slide, it might be in 2 slides after. So the first type of emergency I want to talk about is everyday emergencies. And it is important to say that everyday emergencies are still detrimental and life-changing to the people that they affect. The only reason they are called everyday emergencies is because these are things that do not affect Fairfax County as a whole. For example, if my father, God forbid, had a heart attack, obviously that is detrimental to my family, but that is not something that would involve opening a shelter or affecting the opening of any Fairfax County government agencies or anything of that nature. Other examples are smaller fires or power outages and blackouts that are not large spread within the county or do not directly affect essential buildings in the county. So now I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I'll be able to see the Q&A a little better, or I'll just pull it up right here and we can talk about things that people have been affected by. I will also give an example because I know sometimes it can be a little shy to talk about emergencies. So I like to give the example that unfortunately once my dishwasher um managed to light on fire, which is terrifying to think about because you don't think that something that contains water can light on fire. But what happened is someone was putting dirty dishes into the dishwasher and made the easy mistake of putting disposable chopsticks into it. And it fell out of the grid and into the heating element into the bottom. And disposable chopsticks are wood. And that unfortunately heated up into a fire. Thankfully, no one got hurt and there were no detrimental injuries to anyone in the family, but that was something very difficult for us to go through. So are there any everyday emergencies that people would like to talk about that might have happened to them, whether that could be a unique medical emergency due to your family's situation or something like mine where unfortunately everyone had good intentions and it did cause a really dangerous fire? So Fatima said power outages in the winter and checking in on elderly who doesn't have gas backup. We love that. I'm sorry that you lost power in the winter. That is definitely a terrifying feeling. Thank you for checking on people that might have extra access and functional needs. That is so important. I will also say that if you have Dominion, the Dominion Power Outage app or map is really great on their website because it can show exactly where power outages are happening. And it can show if teams have actually been sent to that area yet. So it's a great way to get a rough estimate. It's definitely not an exact guarantee or a promise of hopefully when your power outage will be resolved. But thank you for checking in on elderly neighbors. And she also wrote, for those who don't have a gas backup, now I just have to state that please never warm your home with a gas stove or anything of that nature, just due to the dangers that come with heating your home with direct gas. Is there anything you'd like to add to this, Jody, before I move on to the other type of emergencies?
I was going to chime in. This is Lucy from the Arc of Northern Virginia. And I'll say for years when we were just starting out as a family and lived in condos, we had the oldest power grid in all of our area. And so when power went off for everyone, it came back on for everyone way faster than it did for us.
Oh
And
gosh.
even if we could be safe in the home, one of my big challenges was I had multiple kiddos who used breast milk as their primary needs of nutritional food, right? And so the need to store that and to be able to take enough of us with that or take the risk of leaving some behind was a really huge consideration when we had issues.
That is a great point. I mean, children are a different type of unique need. You know, they do come with different needs than adults do. So that is huge. And hopefully you were able to keep everything safe and everyone happy and fed. You looked like you wanted to say something, Jody. I'm sorry. Jody knows that if you let me, I will talk.
No, you hit everything. I think we're good to go to the next one.
Awesome. While I'm pulling that up, I will just talk about, another embarrassing story. As I said, my household has unique allergies, so making sure that we have the medication ready for that. And then due to my disability, I have some medication that is very, very important for me to take on a day-to-day basis for, day-to-day functioning. So I will also say that it is really, really important for me to have all those things like they were saying how they needed to protect the breast milk and make sure everyone was taken care of. It is vital for me to have extra medication on hand. And I understand how that can be very difficult with insurances, but some things are worth arguing for. Now we're gonna talk about a different type of emergency, which is human-caused hazards. It's important to point out that this section is not all malintent or people that are doing something to cause harm to others. The very last one on the list is actually dam failure, and that is as in the dams in Fairfax County failing, because we have, I believe, over 30 within Fairfax County, Virginia. And if you've never worked with dams, they actually have to be opened at certain percentages, and that involves people watching those percentages. And as we all know, anytime humans are involved, errors or mistakes come up. We also, though, have the more commonly spoke of human-caused emergencies, such as cyber attacks, civil disorder, acts of violence/terrorism, hazardous materials, or chemical, biological, radiological, or nuclear. Now that I've read them off, I'm going to stop sharing just so we can talk about them and how these different types of emergencies come with a different type of preparedness level than everyday emergencies. And if anyone has been through a human-caused one that would like to talk, feel free to write it and we will definitely discuss it. I will say a really scary one, in my opinion, is cyber attacks. And unfortunately, they can be really hard to prevent. So a lot of the things we can do is be very smart about things in the way that if you have doubt about a phone call or an email, don't respond to it and call a source that you know is legitimate. An example I like to use is after a large disaster, such as a hurricane or something of that nature, your insurance, as in your homeowner's insurance or your renter's insurance, is not going to call you. You are going to call them. And if you have someone calling you stating that they are your insurance, there is a very, very good chance that they are fraudulent and trying to steal your identity and information. So my best advice in that situation is to either delete the email, hang up the phone, and then contact the information that you know is correct, whether that can be the 1-800 number on the back of insurance cards or going through your bank's website to ensure that you are only going to sources that you know are verified to be legitimate. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Jody?
Okay. No, I think you covered it.
I'm trying to think of other ones. Another example would also be, acts of violence/terrorism and civil disorder, and how those can involve sheltering in place for a longer period of time, and how vital it can be to sign up for alert systems that will tell you when something dangerous is happening near your area. I am a huge advocate for Fairfax Alerts. It is a free program where you can have up to 5 addresses, and you can have it notify you by text or email, whatever you feel comfortable with. Also, you can turn off notifications. So for example, I personally do not want to hear every traffic accident in Fairfax County because there are a lot of them. So I have that muted. But anything related to flooding, weather, or acts of violence/terrorism, I have every notification on for that. Now let me go back to sharing and we'll go on to the last one. And now this is the one that I think is more commonly spoken of in Fairfax County just due to the commonality of it. And these are our natural emergencies or natural disasters, depending on the level or terminology that we're using. It's important, especially with our health friends here, to point out the fact that the very last one on this list is emerging infectious diseases. But I am going to quickly read through the list again, just in case we have anyone that is visually impaired due to the lack of alt text abilities. So starting from the top, we have thunderstorms, hurricane or tropical storms, flooding, coastal flooding, winter storm or extreme cold, extreme heat, tornadoes, earthquakes, and emerging infectious diseases. This list is not in order of frequency, and this list is not in order of likelihood or severity. But are there any natural emergencies or natural disasters that people would like to discuss? And, maybe ask a question about, hey, what would have helped me better in this situation? Or what would you recommend in the future? Or, hey, I went through this and it was hard. because it can be hard, and it's important to talk about that. So I'm going to stop sharing because I see stuff in the Q&A. Car pileup on interstate highways in ice storm. The famous I-95 in the snowstorm is my go-to example, because I think everyone was just so caught off guard by that situation. And like how Jody showed an emergency blanket, I think that was one of the best things for people if they had that in their car, because unfortunately, you know, when you're stuck for a long amount of time, you can run out of gas, and that emergency blanket can really help you in a jiffy when it comes to trying to stay warm. But when it comes to other types of emergencies like hurricanes, tornadoes, and things of that nature, it can be really, really important to make sure that you have shelf-stable food and that you always go by the rule, when in doubt, throw it out. And what I mean by that is, let's say your house floods and you have a loaf of bread that just gets a little wet, not every piece of it. Unfortunately, you know, the bacteria does not care that it was not the whole loaf of bread. And if you have any doubt or concern that any food was ever affected by floodwaters, we highly, highly suggest disposing of that very quickly and not consuming it. Is there anything you'd like to add for this activity, Jody?
Yeah, I remember when we had the high winds, I think it was several years ago or so. That was a really scary situation. I mean, I was looking out the window and trees went down in the back, trees were going down in the front at my neighbor's house. I mean, that was really a fright.
Oh, for some reason, she has been popped off. That is okay. She had a great point with high winds, and that adds on to the fact that if there are high winds in a forecast and you have something such as umbrellas or chairs on your patio or deck, I highly recommend securing them so that they do not become flying objects either into your home or into your neighbors. Someone stated that your mother always states that you need to keep a towel and a blanket in your car in case you get stuck somewhere, whether it be an ice storm or just stuck in a ditch. I love that. Your mother is a very smart lady, because, you know, if let's say you're stuck in that ditch and you're having trouble getting out, and once you get out, you're covered in mud, and that towel can be really helpful for getting that first layer of germs off, which can, you know, help lower chances of infection. Other things that can be really beneficial in different types of natural emergencies or disasters can be just ensuring that you have everything hygienic that you use on a day-to-day basis. Going back to my spiel on how I believe this information and materials can be affordable, in your emergency kit, it is totally fine to go to Dollar Tree and buy all of the portable small things made for airplanes. It is totally fine to get the small toothpaste and toothbrush. It is totally fine to get the small deodorant for your emergency kit. If you have the funds and the means to go on Amazon and buy the $300 pre-made emergency kit, I'm not saying by any means don't do that. I'm just stating that that is not the only option. And I am completely in understanding that that is not the situation for everyone. I will also like to say, from an access and functional needs point, something that was really beneficial for me, since I can struggle to open things with my right hand due to my disability, is honestly, with my emergency items, opening them and using them and just making sure that I am capable of physically using them, because something that is supposedly made for everyone, such as those tiny first aid kits, can be really, really difficult to open for people with a physical disability or an intellectual disability if it is not clear where the clasp is. So an emergency kit is not helpful if you cannot use it. And it is worth, you know, going through your emergency kit and opening things that are okay to open. So, for example, please do not open your emergency canned food before you need it, but maybe have canned food for dinner one day and use your emergency can opener and ensure that you are physically able to use it in a way that does not danger yourself. That is very, very important. And again, not everyone's abilities or limitations are the same. So it can take some time to figure out what works for everyone. earthquake was new to Fairfax County residents. What was the procedure if this happens again on a stronger scale? That is a great question. So thankfully, Fairfax County has not gotten a strong earthquake in about 11 or 12 years. And even that one did not destroy any homes, but it did knock things down within homes. When it comes to things like an earthquake, we want to really ensure that we are in a position where nothing is going to fall on us if possible. And we want to be able to ensure that we can protect our head and neck at all times. I am in support of going under the table, and actually Fairfax County government and all of this area just had the Southeast Shakeout drill just to talk about that. So the best thing for an earthquake on an individual scale is going to be going under something and protecting your neck and head and trying to stay under there until the quake has stopped, and then giving it at least 5 to 10 minutes after the quake to ensure that there is no aftershock. On a larger scale, if there was an earthquake and there were a large amount of people displaced, our emergency operations center would get activated, and our emergency team would decide if emergency sheltering is something that would have to happen at that time. Jody, welcome back. We were just talking about how, emergency kits and emergency supplies really do need to be as unique as your family is. And I was trying to explain how, my right hand isn't very good. So I need to be aware of that and ensure that, I can physically use everything in my emergency kit, because I admit, like scissors are not my friend for that reason. And I actually invest in a battery powered can opener, which I know comes with risk because batteries die, but I am not great at the twisting of a can opener. So there are individual, things we can do to make our situations work better for us.
Right. Thank you. Sorry, my computer gave me the boot. It said it's time. You got to go. Anyway, I've always been concerned about power going out and things like that with my daughter's asthma and not being able to use the nebulizer. So I've always been a big fan about having the extra medications with an inhaler and spacer, albuterol on hand. And so that was always a really big one for me, was really making sure I was prepared with medications.
So someone asked a really great question in the chat, and it is, how do you do this, referencing the earthquake preparedness, with a person with physical motor planning disorders, such possible cognitive disabilities, who may not be able to know to get themselves under a table or to protect their neck and head? Now, there's a couple situations for that. If this is someone that has a physical disability, but is able to cognitively understand what we mean by protecting your head and neck, you can always, if you're in a wheelchair, try to get as low as possible, or if you are someone that is able to get out of your wheelchair, to go under the table. If this is a situation where someone that struggles cognitively to understand or might act out when scared or frustrated, which is completely understandable, you can always try to put something soft on top of them. I like to use the example that if you don't have a basement, we recommend, going into your bathtub during a tornado and putting a mattress over people. That is a way that you can try to protect those that maybe do not understand what is going on and do not want to participate in the safety objective at hand. You can try to get them to come with you into the bathtub and get the mattress on top of them as another way to protect their head and neck. You can try to make it a game and say that it is just part of an activity that you were doing. Or you can just, it can be hard. It can be hard. Jody, do you have any advice for this situation?
Yeah, I like your suggestion about playing a game. I think that could work, and putting something soft over them. I think those were two really good ideas. It's difficult, and I think you just have to, everybody's got a way to communicate with their loved ones, and you just do the best you can to remain calm and communicate how you normally communicate, clear, and just we're all going to do the best we can.
Yeah, I completely agree. And if maybe the individual you're working with is just not going to cooperate, maybe they have a sensory issue with putting stuff over their head or neck, maybe it is just not something that is going to go well with them. Another option is, like Jody was saying, doing your best, and that can be going to the center of the room. So while their head and neck might not be directly covered, at least you'll have less concerns about things falling off the walls and hitting them. Sometimes we do have to work with the best that we can, and if they are not going to be comfortable with physically covering their head and neck, getting them away from possible direct projectiles in the room is another way to go about it. Now, I was going, oh, go
I
for
was
it.
going to say having an item of comfort might be helpful too. Something, an item, a toy, a stuffed animal, or something that brings the person comfort.
Yeah, that's also great because some people respond well to shadow play. So doing what they see something else doing. So maybe if you, and I know not everyone with cognitive disabilities responds to this, and I'm aware of that, but if you have someone in your care that with a cognitive disability that does well with shadow play, maybe showing one of their comfort items, kind of covering their head and neck with their arms like a stuffed animal. And then they can say, you know, we're going to play Simon Says, we're going to copy and try to make it in a way that is a little less scary while still getting to the same end goal. So that is a great point. Now we're running out of time. So I was going to get to the screen that has our contact information, but before that, Jody, I want to make sure you have just as much space to talk as I do. So is there anything that you would like to add or you feel like I missed during this conversation?
No, I think we've hit the key points. You really want to be prepared and build your kit and have a plan. It's so important, and you want to do it in non-emergency times, because the last thing we want to be doing when the stress is on us and we've got to act, we want to have our ducks in a row and be ready and be prepared.
Completely agree. And if you or someone you know would do well from an in-person presentation and maybe a walkthrough of making sure, you know, people can open their emergency supplies, or just talking about it in an intellectual level that is the most effective for that group, please feel free to reach out for me on the emergency management side from dems-outreach@fairfaxcounty.gov. That goes to our outreach box. So if you put my name in it, or if you talk about access and functional needs or disabilities, it will get directed to me. And Jody, I believe your email box is similarly managed, and it's an outreach.
Correct. Yes.
So if you are looking for a health-centered or, you know, really health-based presentation, please reach out to Fairfax County Health Department at hdepr@fairfaxcounty.gov. Are there any, I'm going to give it 1 second to make sure there was no other comments that I missed. I live in NRV. How do I speak? Where is NRV? Does anyone?
New River Valley. So that would be west of us, Shenandoah-ish kind of area.
Okay, so they do have an emergency management office, and all counties within this area do have either an emergency management office that is separate from other things, or they have one connected to their fire department. So I recommend contacting your local fire department and stating that you are looking for emergency preparedness information to fit your family at home, and they should be able to get you the information that you were looking for. Also, glad to have someone from out of the area. I've heard that area is gorgeous. Well, I don't have much more to add. Do you, Jody?
I'm all set, and we're really happy to be with you today.
I was going to share a couple of little
Of
tips
course.
that my family has used because we are people who need medications, my husband in particular, and absolutely it is very expensive to have back supplies. When you go to your doctor to get a prescription refilled, asking if they have samples of the medication that you're already taking, doctors can often give you for free. You can call their office every couple of months if you needed another sample to help build up a supply. If you change insurance companies, the month that you change, the new insurance company doesn't know if you got a 3-month supply the month before. So if your doctor is willing to write another prescription, which we've had to ask for a 3-month supply, explaining to the doctor, we're trying to build up the stash. Doctors know what medications are and aren't dangerous for you to have excess of. So we've had them write another prescription, refilled a new 3-month supply with the new company right away. And that helped us build up a little bit of a backstop, which was really helpful and one of the few benefits to having to change prescriptions. If you go to prescription companies' websites or GoodRx, sometimes you can find paying out of pocket can be a lot cheaper at some places than others. Sometimes pharmaceutical companies run specials, reimbursement rates, coupons, things like that that you can print from their website or through GoodRx that can greatly bring the cost down if you do need to pay out of pocket to do it. And a lot of pharmacies will also have non-insured rates. So even if you do regularly have insurance, but you're filling a prescription without it because you're filling up a back supply, you can ask if that pharmacy also has a reduced rate for people having to purchase things without insurance, which is really important. And I love that, Mariah, you mentioned comfort kit items. I mean, in my family, my littlest would go and do anything that we needed if we bring his stuffed Ducky, with us. So Ducky can't live in the emergency kit because she lives with us all of the time. But
Yeah.
like a Post-it, a prompt on our emergency kit, white noise machine, and Ducky absolutely must come with us wherever we go, just so that as you're grabbing things, even if it's not physically there, there's a separate reminder for you that those are the items that get you through things. And
Can
would
I
also,
add
oh, yeah.
one more thing? You brought up a great point with the medicine. And I unfortunately learned this the hard way, not even a week ago. This happens to everyone. I misplaced some medication and I was short maybe about a week. It was obviously unfortunate. And this is something that you build up to. So it's very, very bad to get off on a short notice. And I learned the hard way that my current insurance does not cover lost, damaged, or destroyed or stolen medication. So I had to pay out of pocket to get that medication refilled. And I did use GoodRx, and while it was still a good amount of money, I'm not going to lie, it was doable for me. And everyone's fiscal situation is different, but if you take anything from this presentation, please be careful to not lose your medication, because that was a really frustrating situation. I called my insurance, my pharmacy, my doctor, and the end result was unfortunately that I did have to pay out of pocket due to me misplacing my medication. So thank you so much, Lucy, for bringing that to attention.
Yeah, those were really good suggestions. It's so important to have that, at least that 7-day supply. And it's a conversation you should have with your doctor. And Lucy, you brought up some really good ideas.
For people who have Medicaid, if you have refrigerated medications or medical equipment, Medicaid can sometimes pay for a generator for that person to be able to shelter in place or to keep their medications cool with them as they move with them to another location. So that's definitely something worth looking into. And I know we just passed the tax holiday weekend that happens every year around, if you're buying emergency related supplies and those kinds of things, it's a small fiscal help. Every little bit helps as you're thinking about these kinds of things.
And I see 2 questions in the chat that we did not
Good.
answer. One was, are there ways to identify within to the like fire department or police department if you have an individual with unique disability challenges? So the emergency health profile, if you live in Fairfax County, is going to be your best friend. It is online, and my favorite thing about it is it does exactly that. You have to fill out the emergency health profile. We actually can't access it, and the only time we can see the data is it is connected to your home address. And when there is a call to that address, it shows up on the 911 dispatcher's screen, which they can then transfer to the police and fire department that are responding to that call. And I highly recommend it if you have someone in your home that maybe will freeze if scared or act defensively if scared, just so the police and fire that are arriving know that maybe they need to act a little differently from the last call that they were on to keep everyone safe. So that is the Fairfax County Emergency Health Profile. Community Connect is another great one, and these are both free resources through Fairfax County.
I will add, correct me if I'm wrong, Mariah, but I think that the emergency profile is run through Rapid SOS. Now that'll direct you there if you try and sign one up, which is so important because all of our localities are using that. Arlington, Alexandria, Pennsylvania, everybody's signing up for that
awesome
program. It's a national company, organization. I'm trying to think of the right word there. Not that every single place in the nation uses it, but once it's tagged to someone's name or phone number or whatever, it's theoretically possible to pull that data for 911 operators around the country, because we recognize you can live in Fairfax, but work in Arlington and have a call or something related to an issue that's going there, or vice versa, or what have you. So those kinds of things work together. And as a follow-up to today, I'm happy to send that information out to people. We have a profile for my house. You can enter whatever you want.
There is no downside. There is no
So,
downside.
Like, we're big on, like, my loved one will go anywhere with the stuffed duck, but if you try and leave the house without it, he's going to stay in there in a fire, right? Like, whatever that is for you all, or my kiddo with ADHD is not going to listen to you like you're giving emergency instructions, because he's going to be looking at the emergency, right? Like gentle hand holding, those kinds of things are more important options. There's no limit to what you can put, and the more descriptive on what helps and what doesn't help, the better.
There was one other question about, are there designated shelters throughout Fairfax County, just because not everyone has internet. And I will state that there are shelters within every district of Fairfax County, so every Board of Supervisor district. And we work very hard to ensure that they are as accessible to everyone as possible. We don't release the addresses of the shelters unless they are activated, just because we never want to run into a situation where someone comes for help and we're not there to support them. But when it is time of shelter activation, door to door has happened before when it comes to contacting people. And I promise we scream those addresses and information everywhere when it is time.
Thank you both so very much for being here and for sharing your contact information. If people have questions, you can always reach out to the ARC of Northern Virginia. So much of our job is creative problem solving, right? So if you want to talk through a unique issue you have, we don't have magic wands, but we are happy to share what we've heard from other people and some other clever ways to get around what are really catastrophic problems if we haven't prepared. Thank you all so much for doing what you have. Thanks everybody for joining us today. And I hope we're all leaving a little bit safer and healthier. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.